And welcome back, everyone, to the Pokemon Team Creation Series. Today's suggestion comes to us from Diego Lorente, who asked the question, what is the Pokemon team for Dexter from Dexter's Lab? I am going to assume, by the way, that this was Dexter from Dexter's Lab, not Dexter Morgan from Dexter. If that was what you meant, let me know. And if someone has that request, I'll obviously do that. I've done plenty of other weird ones. Yeah, I've done Jimmy Neutron, one Boy Genius. Might as well do Dexter, the other Boy Genius. Between the two shows, I did watch both growing up, and I did like both. I did like Dexter more. Dexter just had a better energy to it, and just more creativity, I think. Jimmy Neutron definitely was fun, but it was definitely Nickelodeon early CGI show, which, but for the time, it wasn't bad CGI either. For the budget they were probably on, not bad at all. I mean, it wasn't great, but it served the purpose based on the designs. But that's neither here nor there. We're looking at Dexter. By the way, we do not know Dexter's last name. It has always simply just been Dexter. We don't know Dee Dee's last name. We don't know his parents' last name. Hell, we don't even know his parents' actual names, as the best of my knowledge. You know, just Deer, Honey, all that. They just use the pet names. But anyway, Dexter, Boy Genius. What would the team of a guy who's got a secret kind of... It's never actually fully stated how his lab fits in his house. Obviously, it's cartoon physics logic, but we know from the little musical episode with Dexter and Dee Dee that he did just find this place. It wasn't like he created this with like nanotech or something like that. It is something he found. So it's possible that maybe some latent technology was somehow buried in the house or something like that. I am literally just spitballing theories here. But yeah, so what does a genius character, a boy genius, have for a Pokemon team? Well, his starter is the ever lovable and so cuddly Metagross. Metagross makes the most sense. Whoa, let's try that again. Metagross makes the most sense for someone like Dexter. A, it's a steel type, so it leans towards technology. B, it's psychic, which leans towards his intelligence. And Metagross are super intelligent. But C, also, it is a Pokemon that is large enough for him to ride and kind of do mech shenanigans with. Plus, if I wanted to push it, I could give this a Mega Evolution. I'm not gonna for this team. I've done it before, but not this team. And Dexter has very famously used many different types of mechs before. So I think Metagross makes a very large amount of sense for Dexter, absolutely. But we can't forget that Dexter is a scientist. He has done many inventions, many creations, many experiments. Not all of them successful, but one of his most successful ones is creating one of the most famous superheroes of the Dexterverse. That's right, Monkey! And the only monkey that really fit here, because there are a lot of monkeys in Pokemon. You know, the Primeape line, Apom line. There are no monkeys in Hoenn, to the best of my knowledge. The only monkey that's really in... that's really in Sinnoh is the Infernape line, which honestly, I did kind of forget about that, gonna be honest. That could have worked here. I'll say this. I went with Passimian. It's a fighting type. Dexter is also, despite his size and his, disposition for, using mind over matter, he's actually quite physical. Not just getting in mechs, but he will fight. He usually uses like his wrench like as a weapon. He can fight. Like Dexter is actually very capable and actually in good physical shape, surprising for his size. So I felt like the fighting type was good, but thinking on this now in hindsight, you can interchange that with Infernape. It would definitely change out the balance of the team a little bit. I'd have to add weakness, for example, to like ground. Fighting does not resist rock, if I remember correctly, so I'd have to add a weakness to rock and water. But it really actually wouldn't change, like, say, the team's weakness structure all that much. Except it would make the majority of this team, spoilers, weak to ground, which would be problematic. But it would also give you now fire on the team, which would be very advantageous for types before a couple of the other gyms. The problem just really comes down to, if we're talking about, like, say, a balance, stat-wise, it would probably be the most improvement, but balance for like type, it actually wouldn't change much with the team. Like because there's no late game teams where fire really is going to give you a strong advantage. Or let me rephrase that. Where fire is going to give you more of an advantage here than Passimian was already giving you. I think that's the better way to put it, because because the types that fire strong against, fight, except for grass, fighting can already take care of, except for bug. But you've already got answers for bug on this team. I digress. Anyway, yeah, Passimi is what I chose, but Infernape I think is a good secondary. In fact, if I hindsight redo this team, I probably would actually go Infernape. Regardless, being a scientist means he tries to invent. And one of the things we always see him do is just kind of wrenching a gear into place, like a bolt. He's just constantly doing that, working on something. We never know what he's truly working on there, but he's always constantly working on something. And so I wanted to go one of the Clangs, the Clink Clank, or Clink Clank, if you will. I went with Clang. Why? Well, Dexter is still a kid. He's still growing. He's still maturing, and it's noted that not all of his inventions work out perfectly, and he sometimes doesn't complete inventions. So I like this as being like the middle stage of that. Okay, we constantly see him using a wrench on a bolt or something like that, but he never completely finishes whatever he's working on, at least when it comes to that. So I like the idea of Clang, not Cling Clang on the team. Then I knew I needed something because he's an inventor. You usually use tools to invent, including, tool like wrenches, hammers. It's just an added bonus that Tinkaton happens to be this pink little fairy that can slam a Corviknight out of the sky. And who's our pink little fairy that destroys shit? Well, I didn't intend for a DD reference to be on the team, but because really, Dexter probably wouldn't actually have a DD on his team. Because he doesn't hate his sister. He just finds her so annoying. And rightfully so, to be honest. DD is kind of not a great sister at a lot of points. Again, going back to the musical where, it's like, hello, dear brother, what do you have there? Nothing, you only see air. Don't be silly, I love you very much. Oops, I guess I shouldn't touch. And Dee Dee's kind of very self-aware of the fact that she shouldn't be touching shit, and she does it anyway. Dee Dee loves Dexter, we know this. She's not evil. But she is kind of a crappy sister in that way. She actually really is. Between the two of them, he even says, what did I ever do to you? Like, seriously, I'm just trying to do my thing here and just kind of do what I love. And you keep destroying my shit for no other reason than you can. Like, it really is kind of self-centered on Dee Dee's part and kind of cruel. And while Tinkaton's not that evil, it definitely has the malice of whacking random Pokemon out of the sky and hurting him, and this giant-ass hammer, which, yeah, frankly, this makes sense. This works. This makes sense to me. So, yeah, Tinkaton definitely would be a Pokemon I think makes it onto the team. But Dexter is also accompanied a lot of times by an AI of some kind. Usually his base computer, which has the voice of a woman, which he even calls my love. So I knew a Pokemon to represent that would have to be there, and the Porygon line makes the most sense. Given the fact that he's still very young and experienced, has a lot of room to grow, Porygon, the original version, made the most sense here. And in hindsight, this does have a mild dog-like appearance. I probably could have maybe used this for Goddard, going back to the Jimmy Neutron video, but yeah, I'm good without it. It's closer to a duck anyway. Last but not least, when you're talking about technology, what you can do with technology, things in the lab, things like magnetic fields are certainly going to be in there. Magnets, how do they work? Add on the fact that he also carries around lasers with him a lot of time in some capacity. Like he has a laser pen, for example, he used to free the guy who was stuck on the bus in that weird gum cocoon, or gum spiderweb. I decided to go with one of our favorite magnet Pokemon. I went with Magneton. Again, I went Magneton, not Magnezone, because again, Dexter is still got a lot of room to grow. So while he does have a couple really big heavy hitters on here, like Metagross, Tinkaton, and even Clang has some solid stats, Magneton also has got some decent stats as well. It's not a fully evolved team. This is a team that has a lot of room to grow. He can still get Clink Clank, he can still get a Porygon Z, Magnezone, so there is a lot of room to grow on this team. Now, the upside of this team is it actually lacks a lot of weaknesses. Steel, because not half, but 2/3 of this team is Steel, and Steel is one of the strongest types in the game. It only has a couple weaknesses with Fire, Ground, and Fighting being the weaknesses. And right out the gate, Fighting is actually not a big concern for this team, because 2 of them on the team that would be weak to Fighting also are types that resist Fighting, Psychic and Fairy, respectively. Unfortunately, this does not prevent the two other weaknesses from showing up, and they are the two heaviest weaknesses. This team has a 4 out of 6 weakness to both fire and ground. Metagross, Tinkaton, Clang, Magneton. None of their types resist ground or fire, their secondary types. And as a matter of fact, Magneton is times 4 weak to ground because its electric type only has the weakness of ground. Side note, if I were to ever do a video redoing like the type strengths and weaknesses, I would definitely give electric another weakness, because the fact that it has an immunity to ground, it's got an immunity, electric's got an immunity to ground. No, ground's got the immunity to electricity. What am I talking about? The fact it's only got one weakness, and a couple of types resist it, makes no sense in the grand scheme of things. Now, granted, something like normal makes sense to have no strength and 1 weakness and an immunity, but electric, I can logic a couple of things that would be strong. Like, hell, grass, I think, should be strong against electric, just because wood insulates against grass or electricity. Rock, I would even argue, should be strong against electricity, or at very minimum should be resistant to electricity. Yeah, electricity can, like lightning, can crack and crystallize rock, but I don't know. I just think there should be another weakness for electricity than just ground, I feel. Anyway, though, yeah, other than that, though, the only other shared weakness is, ironically, the times 3. It's a times 3 fighting, you idiot. Why did you do times 2? Because Magneton is still going to be weak to fighting. So is Clang and Porygon. But those are it. Those are the only shared weaknesses on this team. Surprisingly, though, what this team has in some major weaknesses, it makes up for, and some really major strengths. It will completely tank and just run through ice and rock types. Surprisingly, it's also got 2 Mon, Fairy and Psychic, that are weak or strong against fighting types. So it's got a times 3 weakness to fighting, while also having a times 2 strength against fighting. Last but not least, though, it is also, ironically, strong against the Fairy type. You have 4 Mon here that are completely strong against Fairy, just due to the fact that they're Steel types. So that is a solid advantage this team has. But last but not least is how well does this team do? As always, how well does this team do? And like always, the top corner here with Metagross going down to the Magneton is where is his starter to his last Pokemon he gets in his journey. So you'd be starting out with a Beldum in every version of this, which means, though, I think we can be nice, and because he's a Psychic type and Dexter is very intelligent, give him Zen Headbutt. I think that's fair enough to say. Which means you shouldn't have any problems whatever in Kanto, period, until you get the Blaine, because of the times 4 weakness to fire. But that you should have Metagross at that point, and Tinkaton at least isn't, like, Fairy isn't actually weak to fire. It's just Fire's resists Fairy. So you might be able to last a little bit. So Blaine's going to be problematic. Luckily, he also only has some very low-leveled under-evolved Pokemon. So, depending on which version you're looking at. So you should be able to handle that without too much difficulty. Just because Metagross at that point would probably be a Metagross, so it should have some good stats against his team. Giovanni is another one you're going to struggle with, unfortunately, but the advantage here is that again, you still have fully evolved Pokemon at this point, or close enough to it, and you got to pass Simeon with a fighting type. So while Blaine and Giovanni are going to be tough, I don't think it's impossible you can beat them. And then really after that, the Elite Four is actually pretty much easy as hell. Lorelei is mostly ice and water. You shouldn't struggle with that. Even though you have a times 3 weakness to fighting, you also have a Metagross who's going to completely go through the majority of those fighting types. You have Agatha, who you're pretty much neutral against, but you should have enough durability on this team to kind of handle her. Plus, all the steel means none of her poison is going to do anything. And Lance as an Elite Four member is not all that difficult, quite frankly. Again, Dragon is resisted by Steel, so you have a Fairy type, a powerful Fairy type on the team. So you actually should manage fine. It's Blue that's going to be the problem. His team is highly balanced and will always have a Fire type on the team And if I'm not mistaken, some sort of ground type on the team to take care. Like, we know Rhydon is on the team, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, because the 3 guaranteed Mon are always Pidgeot, Alakazam, and Rhydon. And then it's either Executor, Gyarados, or Arcanine that swaps out depending on the starter. So he's always going to have a ground type, a powerful one, and a fire type, either Arcanine or Charizard. So, and that's not even going into all the other Mon on the team. The Pidgeot's not going to be an issue. The Alakazam could be a problem. The only thing that you really have on the team that could go toe-to-toe with it and not just go get completely, like, murked is Metagross. And then it all depends then. Like, if he's got the Executor on the team, he should be fine. The Gyarados could be problematic, especially if it's got Intimidate. And again, Arcanine's going to be a problematic Pokemon no matter what. Any fire type's going to be a problem. So I don't think it's impossible to beat Blue, but it's not a guarantee. So that's a strong maybe. When it comes to Johto, real quick, honestly, you can get through the entire game with this team, no problem. Falkner's no issue. The flying's not going to be an issue. Bugsy you might think might be an issue, but because you're going to have a Steel type, you're going to resist. Even though he's Psychic, you're going to resist the bug, no problem. Whitney won't be a problem. You'll have 2 Steel types. One of them will be a Tang at that point, and you got a Fighting type with Passimian. You'll be fine. You should be fine with Morty. You should quite frankly be fine with Chuck, even though he could take down 2 of your team members with his Fighting types. You have a Tang on the team still, and I think it's a Tinkatink at that point. Or is it Tinkatuff? No, it's Tinkatuff, I think, at that point. Point being, you'll still have a Fairy type on the team. You shouldn't have a problem with Jasmine, or you shouldn't have a problem with Jasmine or Morty. You have strong Mon. You have a Fighting type for Jasmine, and your entire team can take down Ice types. Even Claire is not really that big of a deal thanks to Tinkaton, because at that point you will have Tinkaton. And then Will not be a problem. You're pretty much even with Will, but you have enough type coverage with the Steel type and Electric type for some of his Water types on that team. Koga, Poison types aren't going to matter against Steel type. Bruno, you got a super strong Psychic and Fairy type there. Karen, again, you have a super strong Fairy type there, plus a Fighting type. Lance is the only one you're going to actually have a problem with, because whereas, yes, Dragon is still resisted, he no longer he has a more balanced team. He has 3 Dragonites, all with some powerful attacks. He's got a Gyarados with Intimidate. He's got an Aerodactyl, and he's got a Charizard. And the Charizard's the one that's going to be problematic. Not to mention those Dragonites, while Steel is certainly resistant, it's not actually strong against Dragon. The only thing you have strong against Dragon is Tinkaton, which can only put in so much work. So with the Dragonites and the Charizard to be considered, not to mention the Intimidate, Gyarados, and an Aerodactyl just for cheese, you're not, it's again, not impossible, but again, it's a strong maybe. Then you got Hoenn. Hoenn, honestly, is the first no on this list. Why? Well, you're only going to struggle with Brawly because you won't even have a Metang at that point. You're going to have Passimian and not Brawly. Did I write Brawly? Yeah, I did write Brawly. Wait, no, I did. Whoops, I wrote the wrong spot. It wasn't Brawly that was going to be the problem. What was I thinking with this? It was Flannery that was going to be the problem. Because honestly, you can get through the first 3 gyms, I think, without too much difficulty. Even though you only have a Klinkum, a Tang, and a Passimian, the Passimian being a Fighting type will take care of those Magnetons, no problem. No, it's Flannery where you're actually going to run into a big problem, because 3 out of your 4 Mon at that point are highly weak to fire. And you don't have an answer for it. You don't. She doesn't have any Mon on the team that are actually weak to fighting. So Flannery, it's not impossible, but Flannery is where you might just hit the wall right out of the gate. However, I was looking at the wrong list. That's what it was. Anyway, I was looking at the wrong list. My bad. So, yeah, Hoenn. Sorry, and yeah, so I was looking at the wrong list. Hoenn is not a no. Hoenn is a maybe, because after Flannery, if you can get past her, you should have a clean sweep through the rest of the region. That includes all the Elite Four leading into Drake and Steven. Once again, those 2 are the problem children, because Drake has 2 Flygon and 1 with Earthquake. Oh, and I believe that Salamence has fire attacks on it as well. So I have a feeling Drake might be where you stop again. But because of the Dragon resistance and a Fairy type on the team, it's not a lock this time. If you can get past Drake. Steven, the only problem you have for Steven is the fact that you only actually have one Mon on the team that can do anything against rock and steel types, and that's Passimian, and that thing's not lasting long, especially if Anorith comes in or Claydol. If Claydol or Anorith come in and take that thing down, it's now just who wants it more at that point. It's not impossible, but it's a very low level maybe. With Sinnoh, you actually won't have any real problem until Maylene. But the problem with Maylene is, while you'll have a Matang, if you're looking at if she's got the right team, she will have something like Bone Meringue on that team, or Bone Orang, sorry. And ground's a problem. Like, you won't even have a Clank at this point. You'll still have Clink. And your Passimian, while strong, is not going to be able to do a lot. Your Matang is going to be the thing you're going to have to rely on for the Psyche-type moves, and even then, that's not a guarantee. It's not impossible, but again, it's a strong maybe if you can get past Maylene. After that, though, you still got to go through Bertha, which is straight ground and problematic, to say the least. Yeah, there's a couple rock types on the team you can cleave through, though, so it's not impossibility. Flint, who, even though he's only got 2 actual fire types on the team, is a fire-type specialist. And he's just got a weird team because he's also got ghost types, which will actually be able to handle the Metagross. He's also got Lopunny, which is just a weird one. And then obviously you've got Infernape, which is basically this team's nightmare. That's what Infernape is. Oh, you got a Psychic type with Metagross for that fighting? Well, don't worry, he's got a Fire type there too. Oh wait, you've got a Fairy type for that fighting type? Well, don't worry, he's still a Fire type. And he pretty much outspeeds everything on this team. I'm not going to lie, your journey, I think, might end at Flint, because that Infernape, quite frankly, is going to make mincemeat of most of this team. And then, if you could get past them, Lucian shouldn't be a problem, but Cynthia's Spiritomb could actually handle the Metagross, to be frank. Now, she doesn't actually have fire Pokemon on this team, so that is good, but unfortunately, you still have a ground water type with Gastrodon, and Garchomp is a ground fighting type, and then you also have fighting type moves on Lucario. It's just, it doesn't look good for this team against Cynthia. I'm gonna probably have to lean towards no. It's no to the lowest maybe I can offer. Then you get to Unova, and honestly, except for if you're fighting against, Chillin, the fire, or Chillian, the fire monkey trainer, you should actually have a pretty clean sweep of this region until you get to Clay. But even then, you have 5 Mon at that point, nearly fully evolved Metagross. It would be difficult, but you should be able to manage. Luckily, the fact he has an Excavadrill. Why am I saying Excavadrill? Excavadrill. It's Excadrill. Excadrill. He has an Excadrill, which means that you can use a dark ground type with Crocodile, or actually Crocorock, sorry, which means you can just kind of cleave through it with Passimian. The rest of the gym should be fine. Even like the only Elite Four that would give you some mild trouble is Marshall, and because you have Metagross and Tinkaton on the team, you should be fine. The problem is simply Alder and Iris. Iris, being a Dragon trainer, you'd think Tinkaton can get you through it, but she also has non-Dragon Mon on that team, which, quite frankly, are very powerful in their own right. Aggron alone, you don't actually have a strong answer for, because it's Steel type and would resist a lot. Lapras has a lot of coverage on this team. You also have Archeops. And let's not forget the actual dragon she has. Haxorus, Druddigon, and Hydreigon. Yes, you have a fairy type, but that Hydreigon stat-wise is going to completely eviscerate that Tinkaton. So, unless you're able to get some good fairy moves on quick, you are not beating that Hydreigon, and I really just don't think you're beating Iris. You're also not beating Alder, despite the fact he has 3 bug Pokemon. Why? Because one of those bug Pokemon is frickin' Volcarona. And even though its stats aren't quite as good as Metagross's stats, because it's a bug and fire type, it literally resists everything on this team. Why? It's a fire type, which means A, it can resist steel type moves, it's resisting fairy type moves, and it can cleave through the vast majority of this team. And it's a bug type, which means it can resist the psychic moves of Metagross. If it gets a quiver dance off and survives a shot from Metagross, you're done. That Volcarona, once it gets going, you cannot stop that thing. Not with this team, anyway. And it's a bug type, so your Passimian can't do a damn thing. So yeah, there's that. Honestly, with Kalos, you can get through the entire region, no problem. None of them are... The only minor struggle you could have is with Karina. And quite frankly, your Metang at that point should be able to handle it. But beyond that, everything else should be fine. The only Elite Four member that give you any trouble is the Fire-type specialist. Kind of rightfully so, too. But she has like Torkoal, which is really slow. She should be okay with that. But beyond that is Diantha, and quite frankly, Metagross can handle the majority of her team with Diantha. You should be able to handle Hawlucha no problem. Tyrantrum, you might have some trouble, but you'd be okay. I think Metagross goes down by the time we get to Gourgeist. But then at that point, you just throw in one of the other steel types and keep hammering it down. Goodra, you just throw in Tinkaton. And at that point, you just got to kind of wait out the Mega Gardevoir a little bit, throw as much Steel-type moves as you can at it. It's not impossible to lose, but I think it's very likely, more so than not, you'll win. In Galar, you can run. Milo and Nessa are actually no problem here. It's Kofu that is actually a problem here, because you'll only have a mid-stage Metang at that point, and you won't even have a Clang. I actually not sure you can get past Kofu, quite frankly. Because Scorch, type-wise, again, it's a bug fire type, means it can resist the fighting moves of Passimian. Yeah, that actually might be where you stop. If you didn't manage to get past it, you would then struggle in Raihan, because he's a combination ground and dragon double teaming, Pokemon, gym leader. And then Leon, Metagross and Aegislash would struggle with it out a little bit. Metagross might even fall to Aegislash or vice versa. But then the Team Sweeper just comes out. The Dragapult comes out, and that thing has Flamethrower on it. And that means everything on this team is done. Your Tinkaton that has immunity doesn't matter. It's a Steel type. It's done. And then you got a Porygon and a Passimian left. And now what are they going to do against a freaking Ghost Dragon? Seriously, it's that drag. I'm amazed they decided to, again, Charizard having a Gigantamax form, whatever, fine. But, I mean, it makes sense that the pseudo-legend of the region should theoretically be the champion's ace. And if you wanted to give it a Gigantamax form, it's already like a stealth bomber. Make it an aircraft carrier or some kind, or a giant kind of stealth bomber, like a super stealth bomber or something like that. It's not that hard of a concept, Game Freak. But yeah, you would not be able to be the champion of Galar. Finally, Paldea, frankly, you can get through. The only gym leader who would give you any sort of trouble is Iono. And even then, you actually should be okay here with Iono. It's not that big of an... You'll have Metang, definitely. Granted, Miss Magnus's Hex would be problematic, to say the least, and it would be type effective. But I think you should be able to get through the majority of this without too much difficulty. After that, though, the only team or the only trainers that give you any real trouble are Rika and Poppy. Poppy is only somewhat problematic because with Passimian, you should be able to clear a bunch of her team. But Rika, even though a lot of that team is bulky, Rika is going to be problematic because, again, ground is a severe weakness to this team. And you don't have any real strength against ground either. If you do manage to get past them, though, Gita wouldn't be a problem. Gita should be pretty easy to take down. But that is just my opinion. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, though. Hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, share, subscribe. And let me know what you would do different if you did want to do a different team for Dexter Boy Genius. Until then, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. See you later.